carbon cable, it's all ball.
Yes, yes. So people change to offset the travel mileages and things. With buying cheese for Africa, we always wonder. Pepino.
Oh, pepinos.
Pepino.
Pepino.
Something,
Melon, but it doesn't look like. This is what's so great is that
This would be great for your little veggie garden.
Yes.
yeah. So that it's
I think so because it would get rid of the mold problem.
Yeah, it's lifted and higher.
Lifted raised beds, yeah. In wooden crates.
But it's pretty costly. I've seen this before. The Pinot melons. And these are one of the companion plants that are used to keep the insects away, and they're really good for making poultices and anti-inflammatory. Yes, a calendula. Also for eating. So probably some in the pack here. Pansy, the little pansies in the organic salad. And there's lavender that can be eaten, such an amazing healer. And there's just the little petals of the calendula. And yeah, the dianthuses over here. So you have a very beautiful looking salad, but they've all got their own healing spirit within their colour, within the vibration of the plants. They have different qualities.
But it does look like it's a bit of
Now they say we're
Oh, they use poison here too, looks like, eh?
a little bit.
have a meeting with the management has asked what they spray.
They use the synchro and so I don't know how it is.
Otherwise the baby shouldn't be in there.
It's not poison because it's organic synchro, because they use the synchro and guana. So I don't use the chemicals because they don't like GMO in their farm. So it's better.
No GMO, also good.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
if we use I like organic farm because organic farm is good. It's good more than I can say.
It's good morally.
Yeah, it's good because. But when I started, I didn't know nothing about the organic. I know even agriculture. I just come here and say, I see the food. Where the food is coming from.
Yes.
Do they grow everything
And now,
here?
you know,
Yeah,
it
you grow
grows.
everything here. Because like,
Do they have potatoes somewhere here? too?
potato, but because it's a first day today, I don't know where. But my experience, can I use the potato? You can plant potato even inside the tire. You can plant even the bags if you don't want to plant in the ground. Because when you're harvesting, you're gonna damage a lot of potatoes. So it's better when you're gonna plant in the tire or you're gonna plant in the bags.
Okay.
So now I was just saying that we've only started to use commercial when monoculture started, and when we had to produce lots of food inexpensively, and that's where chemicals came in from. But I mean, this is chemical free, so.
Is it inexpensive to grow with chemicals? Surely the chemicals make it expensive.
No, well, chemicals is a very sort of. Let's take Roundup for instance. Roundup is glyphosate, and that's a weed killer, and a few parts per million can kill a few hectares of weeds around your vegetables. So, but it's toxic. So no, it's very inexpensive to use chemicals.
It's inexpensive, but it's expensive in what it does to your planet.
That's the expensive part. But I mean, the past few years, there's a whole community that's focusing on microbes. That's naturally in the soil, and yeah, we're focusing, we're going back to the soil and how it was done, how my grandfather's grandfather did it, and that's, I mean, you can look at the amount of cancer that's available to the, it's astonishing. And that time my grandfather told me that it was weird if someone got cancer. It was, and now it's everywhere. It's everywhere. So no, the link is easy.
And do you think that it's possible to grow enough food for our population without using chemicals?
Look, it's we are a very population has grown and is growing daily, and there's a massive food crisis. But I think if everyone could stand together in a way, if
When you think of it, we throw most of the food away. 60% of all food gets thrown away.
yeah,
And a lot of the food then gets turned refined and poisoned by the additives, so then you can't use it anyway. And a lot of food is just GM, so what's the point of all that food? That's not even nutrition.
yeah, there's enough food for everyone twice over on this planet. But like you said, if what's happening? I mean, what are we doing wrong? And yeah, it's a difficult one. I think if the key should be if everyone could just maybe stand together and start knowing what's going on in the soil in your backyard, and applying earthworm, for instance, applying earthworm juice to your vegetable garden. I mean, if the plant's healthy, then take for instance the cell wall of a plant is made out of a combination of elements, but calcium being the main one. If you look only into your calcium needs of the plant, then it's difficult for diseases and fungi to penetrate the plant, so they just move on, and small insects. So it's basic things. It's science that's going to win this, and knowing your soil and knowing your plants and knowing how it works. And if everyone can get like a base crash course on how it works, then you won't go to your Agrimark and buy something that kills the snails, and obviously then kills the earthworms and kills everything around it, but you've got your one lettuce. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And also it ends up in the sea. Now the sea is dying.
Nutrient leaching, yeah.
80% of all chemicals and hair shampoos and soaps, everything ends up in the sea.
There's a in obviously the sea. You've got that whole conveyor, the plankton conveyor, the chlorophyll. What's that? The algae.
Phytoplankton.
And if they die off, the whole system will shut down.
At the moment, the latest study that was released about 6 weeks ago, results of a 30-year study were released that said that at the present rate of decline of oxygen levels in the sea and the phytoplankton decline, there will be no oxygen in the sea virtually by 2030. And since they produce 50 to 65% of all the oxygen, including the land oxygen, that's probably going to have a big effect on us. We believe that the whole advantage of organic farming is that the one thing that can change that around, the fastest way we can take the carbon dioxide out of circulation and cool the planet, is to build up the microbiome underneath the soil. And they can only do that if you stop poisoning them and stop leaving them bare and get
exactly. Yeah. Like for instance, making compost, like everyone did 100 years ago. It's making compost and getting that in your soil. Compost produces a acid called humic acid, and humic acid is one of the most important acids that we need. And what it does, it holds everything together. So now when it starts raining, everything just stays where it is, and everything doesn't wash out and move into the rivers and the rivers into the sea. So the whole thing could be just compost. Just one thing could change 20%, 30% of the whole system. And composting, I mean, what's so difficult about making compost and using it and eating healthy vegetables from that?
It's almost impossible to make compost if you use genetically modified food, because it doesn't break down at all. The bacteria don't like it any more than our bodies.
Yeah. Look, there's There's good GM and then there's bad GM. I've seen good GM where they, like for instance in India, they had a bacteria that that sort of attacked the pawpaw. I don't know what's a pawpaw in English.
Same thing.
Is it a pawpaw? And what they found is they genetically modified the fungi that's doing that, and they induced that in an early stage into the fruit. But when it was at a natural stage and you would eat that pawpaw, it was almost at a toxic level. But inducing it in the beginning and putting that fungi in the seed from the beginning, it sort of the pawpaw was now available for the people to eat again, and it was at such a level, at such a holistic level that it was a good GM.
On the whole, there's no such thing as a good GM, because they said the same thing about the same one that perforates the stomach lining of beetles. They said it was too small to damage anybody else, but at the moment there's a condition called leaky guts in cattle.
Okay.
30% of animals die from it, and it also goes into humans. It's also creating our food intolerances, and it's because it isn't what they say. It isn't so harmless, and it actually creates a condition of leaky guts in everything. And that means that undigested food is passing directly into the bloodstream. It's causing the food allergies, and it's causing the leaky gut system syndrome.
No, point taken. I mean, yeah, I think everything should be researched, and you seem like you do your research, so I like that.
Thank you.
This is her baby. They're doing all of this vegetables. I'm taking on a 3 hectare complete organic production area. So this is the aesthetic area, and then there's a production area that I'm starting, which is like this but more intense organics.
And will you use the shade cloth?
No, I'm going to do it in old school way.
Oh, okay.
And what
Will you use the above the ground system, or will you use the in the ground system?
What do you mean?
Well, I noticed lots of people put these poles and they build it up and they put it slightly higher above the ground.
Oh no, in the soils, like I said, old school. Like we even gonna plow with horses and stuff like that.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah.
Where are you going to do this?
It's just down here. Well, behind this poplar sort of forest, there's a 2 hectare.
How many
area.
hectares is this garden on our
This and this included is about 2.5.
right? Wow.
Wow.
And does it produce quite a lot of food? Have you got any idea?
It does produce lots of food, but what this garden is about is what she wanted to do is to show the whole effect of permaculture and how animals and the whole system can work together. So this works, but this is not sort of put together for production. It's put together to display a model of permaculture. Yeah.
But where do all the vegetables go?
So all of it, everything that you eat or drink in this restaurant or the werf, that's where that go, and then external restaurants and chefs.
So you are selling it out as well?
Yes. Well, for instance, we're struggling to get potato seeds because potatoes. The potato industry had a big knock because of the drought. No, because I may be wrong, but this is my theory. But all the water that when the world started is still in circulation. It can't go out, so it moves around. So the water and everything moves around, and I think the water is now going to. There is going to be areas that's going to struggle and become sort of desert-like, but I think there's areas that will get more rain than what they expected to get. The problem is not the weeds and stuff. The problem is a fruit fly that comes in and stings and lays his eggs. So you can bait them, and you can. We've actually did a 2-day seminar now with I consider one of the best soil scientists alive, and they and a company called Real IPM. Her name is Jean. Not sure her surname, but her name is Jean, and they're doing amazing work with fungi. So what they're doing is they're growing fungi that attacks insects. So the fungi will literally live off the insects and eat them from the inside and spore, and so you'll have aphids or whatever, and you spray this fungi over them, which is a natural thing, and they sort of sit onto the insect, and they literally just goes into the cracks, the exoskeleton of the animal, and they start just living. And a few days later, that same insect will sit there, but if you look closely, it's sort of almost like when you left bread in the fridge for too long, it's moldy. It's just coming out of the insect, and that is the next step. Is taking biology.
And there's no effect on us. It's not going to suddenly become the dreaded killer.
It's actually going to make you. It's almost a biotic. So no, it's a good thing. So that's where we're moving to. What people sometimes don't understand, that there's I myself, I'm sort of I'm a tree hugger in a way, but we have to embrace science. And there's lots of stuff out there that says, no, just mix this and mix this peel with this and spray it there. And but I mean, you're talking about a 240 hectare fruit system where there's multiple layers of this fly. So it's really difficult. For the home grower, yes, I can believe that something like that can work. But on a massive scale, and that's why I take my hat off for these guys and for the CEO, which is the main sort of seed planter in us. But what he's doing is he's taking part in a system where we move from the conventional, and we're starting with we've started with pigs, and we're taking this whole thing into what it was. But we're doing it on a massive scale, and we're doing it on a scale that works and that is profitable. That's the main thing, because it's sustainable agriculture. So even Jacques, the guy that's responsible for all the fruit trees, he's an amazing guy, and he's following science, and he's moving from biological, and everything is moving. So I'm very excited. We're in a very interesting time, actually. There's still guys out there that does the wrong thing, and sometimes that pays, which is the sad thing. But there's big influential people out there that's making a difference.
Just too late. It's potentially
the damage is done, and I don't know. I think I don't know if you want that on camera, but
please,
I think if not all of the farms tomorrow will start doing what we are doing here, it's gonna crash and burn.
Planet-wide you're talking about?
Yeah.
The influence your neighbours, can you talk to them?
You can. I mean, we did the seminar, and farmers from all over came, and you saw this one guy. I laughed when I heard it, but and one of the breaks, I walked out and I went to the bathroom, and he was on the phone, this farmer, and he said, no, stop all the Roundup. You can't believe how these guys are going on about this chemical. Stop it now. And it's amazing. And that's because of the science and people coming forward with
It's actually banned in a whole lot of countries since last year.
Yeah.
Roundup.
Yeah.
That's great. So there are
So
some
it's
good
moving,
things, yeah.
but we have to move quick. That's the thing. There's guys that says that we're not going to see 2050. So we need.
And that's happening because of the chemicals.
Excuse me?
And that's happening partly because of the chemicals, because the phytoplankton are affected partly by the heat, but mostly by the chemicals. And put it this way, the heat is coming about because the biome in the soil is going down so fast.
Yes.
You need the biome here to really, really thrive.
Yeah.
And don't know how quickly you can get it back. 7 years is almost too long. You know, you've only got 14. You don't want to take 7 years before it can be organic status.
Yeah, no, it's like I don't have an answer. I wish that there's a quick fix here, but we need a mind shift, and we need it yesterday. But I'd love you to meet Megan. She's amazing. I'm gonna go get her quick.
Yeah, and pretty much run this garden on their own.
Are they all organic experts, kind of thing?
I'd say so. You guys could start gardens at home now, chemical-free.
Plants, and I don't want. If the insects doesn't want to eat it, I don't want to eat it.
That's a bit changing
So-
my
That's a nice attitude, eh?
point.
I mean, yeah, they're obviously more sensitive than I am. So, well, I think I am more sensitive than they are. So I don't know what's going to do to my system if they don't want to eat it. So
Well, that's what GM, GM, the bacteria don't eat it.
Wow.
Her husband is a permaculture farmer. He's actually Mr. Permaculture of Africa, basically, in my
Wow.
opinion. And I film him a lot, because I've been for a long time.
He's experienced.
Squin, he's doing organic. He's doing organic bread, and he's starting to get it
yes,
out to
that
farmers
in
and to
Stellenbosch,
farm staff and everyone.
But
Because
where
wha-
does he get his flour from?
From a guy called James Moffat from Bloemfontein.
Where does he get it from?
He grows it. He grows
grows
organic.
Is he the only one who grows it?
Yeah.
So there is organic.
Eureka, is that non-organic? That's organic.
I don't
isn't it?
know.
No,
Well, it's
yes,
not GM.
organic.
It's not GM.
Things. And they also want to bring out organic beer and everything. And he came to Cape Town and he's going to see if he can divert all the farmers into that model.
Really? Really? Oh, that's
Okay, all right. Boschendal was recently bought up by new investors who are very passionate about the environment and have based the new Boschendal ethos very much upon sustainability. So there have been some major changes recently and a very big swing to supplying organically grown produce, eggs, beef, chickens, and obviously vegetables. So that was my brief when I started here, was to be able to grow organically grown stuff for all the catering concerns on Boschendal. We're very fortunate to have some surplus. So I have been supplying online organic shops in Cape Town and other chefs and restaurants and hotels, etc., in the area. Yeah, and I think for me the greatest thing about this space is that it provides a platform to educate people about organic food growing. So it's been a very special space and time for me here on Boschendal. For the public, obviously health. I'm very pro using food as more than just nutrition, but almost as a medicine. I think we underestimate the healing abilities of our food, but it goes beyond the advantages of humans. For me, probably the most important thing is that there's very little impact on the environment, and that we're leaving something untouched for our children. I think the fact that we're damaging our soils, that we are losing astronomical amounts of topsoil every year. The statistics are horrific. If we carry on the way we're carrying on now, we won't have good enough soil to grow food in. So we're putting a lot of things at risk, not just our soils, the whole system. We really do not understand how dependent we are as human beings on the agricultural system. And if our food system collapses, I think we're going to be in very big trouble. We don't need them. I think the wool's been pulled over our eyes. We definitely don't need them. We've proven time and time again in organic food growing processes that we have everything at our disposal to grow our food. Plants aren't much different to human beings if they're healthy and their source of nutrition is healthy. They don't get sick. Very much like us. There's no need for chemicals. Look, without getting too much into the conspiracy theories, etc., I think a lot of our chemicals are based on surpluses and byproducts from the petro industry boom. A lot of technology and chemicals were developed during some of the major wars we had in the early part of last century, and they needed to do something with all of that left over, I guess. So I think that's where all the nonsense started. And it's about money at the end of the day. Quick buck. Personally, I would love to see more and more of us, specifically in urban environments, growing our own food. We all have the ability to grow a huge amount of food, which will enable us to share with others. But I think it goes beyond sharing surplus. It's about sharing knowledge and equipping people and inspiring people. And I think inspiring independence more than anything else. We're too system dependent. If we can take control of our own lives and take responsible for our own wellness, we'd be a lot less drama in the world. I think definitely the inclusion of food growing skills into our school curricula. Definitely. I think it's sad for me to see how few children are still in contact with their food and actually understand where it comes from. I think that's a good start. Children are amazing. Such little ambassadors. If you plant a good seed in a child, you have a champion, an environmental champion for the rest of that child's or human being's life. I would most definitely ban the rake. I believe that we overexpose our soils, and it's time to accept that trees lose leaves for a reason and leave them there. They're good for the soil. And I'd maybe ban the straight line too. There's so much we can learn from nature. We need to observe what nature does more and understand how natural systems work. There's no need for chemical. We have everything at our disposal to grow healthy food. Look, beyond just the fact that genetics are being messed with, to me the biggest or the frightening thing, component of genetically modified foods is the glyphosate link. We are too obsessed and absolutely dependent, or we think we're dependent on herbicide, and we are damaging our water systems, we are damaging our guts, we are exposing ourselves to horrendous carcinogens. It's got to go, it's got to end. I think definitely educating our children. I can't express that enough. Definitely more education, environmental education, food education, medicine education. Our children need to know. They need to be equipped for what's waiting for them. That they don't make the same mistakes our generations will be before did. Big focus on kids.
Yesterday I released a document that was in relation to there was a news article came out that the minister was basically trying to play down the costs of solar power. They said that the solar power plants were costing them between 50 and 62 billion over the course of his 20-year contract. And as a result it was too expensive, and therefore South Africa was using it to justify the need to move over to nuclear. And there's a whole lot of back-end politics that goes in with that. Anybody that's in the renewable energy industry knows that it's an absolute load of rubbish, because a solar plant, and in this case they're referring to a 100 megawatt solar plant, for us to build a 100 megawatt solar plant costs us roughly 2 billion rand, and therefore it makes no sense as to why you would enter into a contract for 60 billion when the actual cost of the plant is 2 billion, and it makes its power from the sun exactly the same way that these people are going to be doing it. So why wouldn't local municipalities, Eskom, etc., whoever, why wouldn't they just build their own plant and pay some people for maintenance, and that's it? And then it wouldn't cost them 60 billion rand, because ultimately renewable, what I proved inside that letter, is a far cheaper form of power. And then in addition to it, I brought into the environmental benefits in terms of the amount of charcoal that is used by coal fire, the amount of water that is used by coal fire, 1.32 litres of water per kilowatt hour of energy, 1.32 litres, ludicrous. 1 kilogram of coal burned for 1 kilowatt of energy, 1 kilowatt hour of energy. I mean, it's absolute madness. So then I went on to nuclear, and I just explained the whole process of uranium and the cost, the CO2 costs that are associated with it. And I summarized basically by offering to show them supporting documentation that proves how much a solar plant costs on a cost sale basis on that scale, which is 100 megawatts. And at the end of the day, we're being completely misled. This has become a political tossing ground. What they're really trying to do is they have an intention, a small group of people have an intention to try and go with a beneficial kind of contract system where other people are making astronomical amounts of money that is costing us, the taxpayer, and also the consumer of that power. We are having to pay for this, and for no reason. And they're misleading us as to why they're doing that, and that's what that document was about.
I think it's very important that we have to make sure that we look after the land, the soil, the whole environment, and to save that for the future. We actually borrow, all of us borrow actually the land from our children and from their children. And we have to make sure that we hand it over to them in such a manner that they also can make use of that in a sustainable manner.
Are you aware that the amount of oxygen they've just completed, because we do a lot of research for Mother Channel television, and are you aware that there is a 30-year study has just been concluded that says that the diminishing oxygen levels in the sea caused by increasing heat and increasing pollution, and that therefore the killing the phytoplankton, the little small plants in the sea, that means that there's going to be no oxygen in the sea virtually by the year 2030.
Now, I was not aware of that study, so this is for me something I heard of it today now from you, so I'm not aware of that.
Do you mind if I contact you again once I've shown you the study, and then you see if you've got any ideas?
Yeah, for sure, we can discuss it once again. I came from Pretoria, I'm not from this area, but you are more than welcome to contact us, because for us we have only one purpose as an organization, and that is to try to keep a commercial farmer safe and in production on a sustainable basis on his farm. That is for us the purpose as an organization, and TAU SA is looking for that, and everything that can make a positive contribution to that, we will actually support that, and if it's negative, we will try to address it and looking for a solution. Now, I think that the biggest asset that any government in these days in the world they do have is a commercial farmer in production. In South Africa, 67% of our population is already urbanized, and therefore we need for sure commercial farmers to make sure that they produce food for the market. And that should be on a sustainable basis, and that is something that you should bring into balance. That should be profitable for them, but they also should have to look after the land, the soil, the water, to make sure that it will be there next year again, that we can produce food again. And that is the most important thing for us as farmers, and it is for us a privilege to be in that section of the economy to make that contribution.
Are you yourself a farmer?
I used to be one. At this stage I'm only a small-scale farmer, but I'm full-time in the organization.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Jason, before we talk to the viewers again about what's happening in the electricity world, could you just tell people at home, because we've had a lot of questions on this, about what is a megawatt, what is a kilowatt, what is a watt, how much do people use, what's the difference, what's kilowatt hours?
Okay,
that whole thing.
So I'll run the quick math. There are 1,000 watts in a kilowatt.
Right.
So that's like 10 100 watt light bulbs. There are 1,000 kilowatts in a megawatt.
Right.
1,000 megawatts in a gigawatt.
A gigawatt.
Right.
1,000 megawatts.
Right. So South Africa uses 236,000, something like this, 240,000 gigawatt hours of energy.
Wait, we haven't said what a gigawatt is.
So that's 1,000 megawatts.
1,000 megawatts.
Right. And a megawatt, 1 megawatt is 1,000 kilowatts. So as an example, if you look at your electricity bill, they have a thing called a kWh, which is kilowatt hour.
Right.
So a kilowatt hour is the total amount of kilowatts used over the period of a day. Now in Eskom's case, it is the period of a day, but it can also be if you burn whatever. So if you take 5 kilowatts and you burn it for whatever, 1 hour, it's a 5 kilowatt hour. It's the total amount of energy used within a time frame, a period.
Right.
But the way that it's reflected on your bill is reflected generally for your daily consumption. It's normally averaged.
Right.
So at the end of a month, they will say you've used 486 kilowatt hours. That's your total usage of energy or electricity.
So you build for kilowatt hours.
You build in kilowatt hours.
All over the world.
Right. So now what you would normally do, and I'm going to use easy numbers. Okay. So let's say for argument's sake, your bill at the end of the month is for 300 kilowatt hours. you are then charged normally on what's called a tariff, rate, which is normally like whatever, R1.50, R1.80 per kilowatt hour.
Right.
So they would take that, whatever the figure is, depending if you're prepaid or whatever tariff code you're on, and they multiply it by your usage, which is the 300 kilowatt hours. And that's how they determine what your electricity cost is.
Right.
On top of that, they generally would add some other services, line lease costs, that kind of stuff. They would add that, but what we're referring to here is electricity costs.
Now, there is about something like, is it 8,000 hours in a year, or something like that.
Okay.
So if you have an installation that puts out 10 megawatts, does that mean it can put out 10 megawatts times 8,000 hours in a year?
Right, so you get viable output. A 10, for instance, a 10 megawatt, or let's use something smaller, 10 kilowatt or whatever, any size of solar array.
Right.
It will have what we call peak generation, which is over your primary arc in terms of sunlight. Generally, the rule is 15% before those hours, 15% after those hours. Is not full production.
Right.
So to get slightly more technical, a solar panel is rated by something called a STC, which is a standard test condition.
Okay.
And what that means is, if you have a 250 watt solar panel, what they do is they lay it over a sunbed, and that sunbed puts out 1,000 watts per square meter. And based on the impact of that sunlight, the amount of electricity it generates, they rate that solar panel. Now, to come back to your question, if you put one of those solar panels at a good position, at a good angle, up onto your roof, and you leave it for the day, in the early morning, say between 8 and whatever, 10 o'clock, you're not going to get full generation.
Right.
So that solar panel, even though it's a 250 watt solar panel, it's not going to produce 250 watts.
Okay.
Because the incidence of the sunlight on the solar panel is not direct. So it will underproduce. It will maybe do whatever, 180 watts or all the way down to zero.
So when you get just to kind of...
So to come back to your original question, inside of a day, we as renewable energy people, we take what's called an engineering norm, which is we always work with 5.5 hours.
So when we've got a 250 watt solar panel, that is what it does at the peak of sunlight. But it might be less at different times of the day.
Correct, yeah.
But to return that to our original question about kilowatt hours per year, and the relationship between a certain installation and the number of kilowatt hours.
Right.
So kilowatts to kilowatt hours. People want to understand what's the difference. How does that work?
Right. So when they talk about 100 megawatts, it's what we call about 100 megawatts deployed, meaning that they'll put up. So put it in easier terms, but they'll put up 100 megawatts of solar panels on the ground.
Right.
They're not telling you how much it's going to produce for the day. They're not saying. So the expectation generally would be is that you should pick up 550 megawatts or half a gigawatt of output from a 100 megawatt plant. So there's a difference.
Numbers again. There's a 100 megawatt.
So if you've got 100, we work on a standard saying that even though the sun comes up in its daytime for you, from whatever 7 in the morning, and at 7 at night it goes down, and that's 12 hours. We don't calculate based on 12 hours. In areas like Dar or these kind of areas, you can calculate on 6 hours or 6.5 hours or whatever. But what I'm trying to say is that we always calculate on a minimum standard, which is normally 5.5 hours.
Okay.
So when I design a 100 megawatt array, my expectation is for it to work for 5.5 hours of the day at full production.
And that would be how many kilowatt hours then?
So if you had 100 megawatts that was producing at 5.5 hours, you'd have 550 megawatts.
Right, okay, got it.
But that, because there's 1,000 megawatts in a gigawatt, it's the same thing as saying it's just over half a gigawatt.
Right.
But that's production. So but what they're talking about in the newspaper, which is why we're having this discussion, is they're talking about a 100 megawatt plant, and what that means is 100 megawatts deployed.
Right.
So on the ground, if it's 10 solar panel, 10 or whatever, if it's 4 250 watt solar panels, that's a kilowatt deployed.
Okay.
If it's whatever, It's what you put on the ground, and there's nothing to do with how much power it makes. Now, what the minister was referring to, and what NERSA was referring to in that article, was they were saying that we have been bound by a power purchase agreement, which is what the IPP is. It's the power purchase, but it's power purchase agreement, PPA. And what it is they are bound at a certain rate. So a developer comes to the minister, says, hello minister, I'm responding to your bid, and we're going to put out this bid, and we're going to offer you electricity at R1.05 per kilowatt hour. Or per whatever, we were R2.80 per kilowatt, whatever their value is.
Right.
So they are basically selling electricity to Eskom. Eskom then signs an agreement saying, I accept that, and I will utilize that, and I can on-sell that.
Okay. And on the production of that electricity, if it was nuclear or if it was coal, how would the whole kilowatt hour thing work with the...
Right, so they do exactly the same thing. So you don't judge okay, so first of all nuclear, coal, petroleum, natural gas, all of them, they all use steam turbines. Those turbines have a rating, either, whatever, they're 550 meg or 500 megawatts. That's their rating, that is their deployed. Medupi is rated at 4,700 megawatts. It means that they have turbines in there that are rated at 4,700 megawatts. So when you switch it on, that will produce 4,700 megawatts every hour. Every hour it will produce it. So over the course of a day, obviously it's a massive amount of power, massive amount of energy there. But the reality is that if you take a look at Medupi, so Medupi was initially intended to cost 5.4 billion rand in this case.
Okay.
Actually, I think I converted to US dollars, but anyway, so it meant to cost 5.4. I think it's billion US dollars for the construction. It's the largest coal-fired power station in the world. Well, once it's completed, it will be.
Okay.
However, after 2 years, they said no, they were unable to complete it. There was issues with it, and the costs went up.
Okay.
Now they're sitting on, it's almost year 10. They still haven't completed the plant. It's still not fully functional. It's almost doubled in cost in terms of what they originally stated it was going to cost.
Okay.
Now that is not always the norm with coal-fired. Coal-fired is not as inaccurate as that traditionally.
Right.
But there is a technology that is, the norm, and that's nuclear. Nuclear forever comes in over cost, over budget, over time.
Like the French one in the UK.
Yeah. So the same story. I mean, like everything, whatever you loan originally to meet the cost of production for a nuclear plant is inevitably going to overrun all budgets, and it scares people. It scares countries. If you're signing up a deal for 1.4 billion euro and to produce it, in the back of your head, you've got to be starting to worry about. Hang on, this could actually cost us 2.4, 3.4, whatever it is. 100 billion euro, whatever. It's the same figure. In your mind, you know that is not a persistent figure.
Right.
And so there's problems with it. And then aside from the problems with it, a lot of countries in Europe, they export the nuclear waste. Ironically, this country, South Africa, was picked up as importing. We're registered as an importer of nuclear waste. God knows what we do with it.
I wonder.
But that nuclear waste goes somewhere,
Valplatz.
Sorry?
Valplatz.
Okay, so there you go. But I mean, and that's just from one nuclear facility or a group of nuclear facilities in single place, and we're importing it here. But all over the world, there is byproduct. In Coburg buries on site. So that means that even long after Coburg has ceased to operate, that ground will have nuclear waste.
Okay.
But nuclear waste is not actually the big problem, so much the big problem. I mean, nuclear waste is never nice, no matter what you do. But there's other problems. So nuclear has to desalinate the water and to,
Before we go into the other problems, just on the kilowatt hour thing, how long, it's 5.5 hours on average for solar per day for a coal-fired reactor.
No, so they run 24 hours.
They run 24 hours.
Well, I mean, they're load dependent, so they're demand side dependent.
Okay, because sometimes they disengage for a while. We've heard about that.
Yes, so that's called wheeling. So what happens is when you have, so if you're powering any demand, so any kind of load, at any given point during the time of the day or time of the year, the demand may be higher. So let's say we're powering this house for argument's sake. In the morning, we're all making breakfast in the kitchen, and our demand is maybe 5 kilowatt, whatever it is.
Right.
But then during the day, everyone goes to school and goes to work, and the demand drops right off. Now it's whatever, half a kilowatt. It's just powering your fridge and a bunch of other stuff that you left on. Right. But then you come home at night, and everyone's home. They're using their geysers, and but the exact same thing that happens with this house can be extrapolated on a macro scale for a city, for a province, for anything.
So everybody does the same things roughly at the
right,
same
but
time.
it makes a variation, so it makes a pattern. So what happens is any power plant, whether it's coal fire or nuclear or anything, they have to gear up to supply demand. But there can be a gap, and that gap can be short. It can be anything from hours up to a few minutes, but there are drop-offs. Now you can't have a turbine that's producing all this power, and that power goes nowhere.
Right.
So what they do is they disengage it, and it goes into a state called wheeling. So they're still turning the turbine, but it's just not producing power.
Okay, and for nuclear, do they do that too?
It's the exact same concept. Yeah.
So
in
they
fact,
put the rods in
nuclear,
to stop it.
Nuclear, you don't switch off. So you can't really. One of the big problems with nuclear, in fact, this is the big problem that they have in Japan with Fukushima, is that once you've got your heat, once the production, once the chain reaction has started, there's no switch, man. You can't walk up to a nuclear plant and go, okay, off now. Right. It doesn't work like that.
Okay.
It's a savage beast. You're splitting an atom.
Right.
So anyway, the net result is they have exactly the same principle. It goes into a state of wheeling. They disengage the actual production. The power is still being put into the actual turbine, but they've disengaged the production.
Okay, so they don't stop the reactor. They don't put the rods down like they would do.
No. If they're going into a state of maintenance, then obviously they will cut the output. But at the end of the day, I want you to put it in perspective, and there is really no difference. The reason why nuclear is because it takes less to make that much more heat. You're using a more advanced, you're splitting an atom, which is what's releasing that massive amounts of energy inside of that atom to basically flash boil water. I mean, that's what you're doing. You flash boiling water. It's like, woo.
Yes.
But in coal, it's not different, really.
Right.
But you've got to keep that temperature at some constant super. You can't walk in there and spray it down with a hose to switch it off.
Right.
Yeah. You can taper it off. And slowly cool it down. But even if you were to shut them down today, like a coal fire, it would take weeks to actually cool down to a point that it's functional.
A coal fire.
A coal fire. Forget nuclear. I mean, nuclear, coal fire, petroleum. It's all the same thing. It's all the same principle.
Right.
It's operating on a heat basis, and the heat is what is evaporating steam, and that steam is driven into a turbine. Turns the wheel, and that's what generates. And the thing that I always find the funniest about this whole thing is that you can understand the basic principle of coal. You heat something up, and you're using the steam to turn a wheel, and that's sort of sensible. But when you start splitting atoms,
right?
I mean, it's like one of the most powerful reactions in the universe, almost. I mean, It's immensely powerful. I mean, outside of fission, it's huge.
Yeah.
And you're using it to boil water. It's the concept is crazy. It's crazy. And when accidents happen, they happen. And I mean, if you think about it, in our lifetime, we're already aware of 2 accidents. You've got Chernobyl, you've got Fukushima. There are countless other...
3 Mile Island?
Yeah, I didn't even know about that. But I mean, there's countless other incidents that happen. But coming back to a nuclear reactor, for argument's sake, they all have a byproduct. So they flush out. There's a huge outflow of hot water. Now, because most of that comes from the sea and they don't really care, they just dump it into the sea. It goes back into the ocean.
Right.
And that's why the water is always generally warmer around nuclear reactors.
Right.
But of course, it has a dramatic impact on all the entire marine ecosystem that surrounds a nuclear plant. I mean, it is devastating.
Okay.
So everything changes, everything shifts, and so that's another byproduct that you have from nuclear. I mean, it's not as bad, obviously, as nuclear waste, but it's right up there. It has a traumatic impact.
Now, you've been very involved in the new storage technologies that are coming on stream. How will that affect this concept of wheeling and disengaging from
Right.
base load?
So I mean, it's like beautiful. It's really beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. There's actually a couple of ways to conquer what we call a base load problem. The base load problem is you have solar power and it's up in the day, but at night there's no solar power. So
Right.
what happens? And that's the base load problem. And the same with the wind turbine. You've got all these wind turbines all around the country producing wind power, but there are times when there's no wind. So what happens?
Even in Cape Town,
Right,
it's quite rare.
well, very rare. Yeah. It's at heights, yeah. But anyway, it's a problem. Okay, so there's a couple of technologies that stepped into the gap. One of these technologies is renewables called CSP, or concentrated solar power, and they use a type of salt, and they go through what's called a phase change, and they store the output. So they have all these mirrors, concentrate on another name for it is a power tower, but they concentrate on a point of light, and it melts the salt, and it basically stores the heat.
Right.
And they can utilize that heat for overnight or days at a time. But the principle of storing energy as heat is there.
Right.
And of course, it's well over-engineered. I mean, seriously over-engineered. You can buy this stuff. It's Israeli technology. The storage technology is Israeli. The Israelis are very good at this kind of stuff.
Okay.
But so if you understand that here we've got these really advanced concepts that people that are trying to confuse you, they throw at you.
Okay.
Like they'll talk about things like, how do you store 50 megawatt? What is the base load? And they'll throw concepts at you
That's why we need you, Jason.
No. But I mean, it's not just me. It's not just me.
Yes.
As complex as they try to make it sound, it actually comes down to a very basic mechanic.
Right.
Like you heating up something, and then you putting water through the thing, and that water boils. It boils, and then do you understand?
It's a turbine.
And it runs a turbine. It's the
creates
exact
mechanical energy.
exactly right, and the same principle. And another thing that I also love, I must just say this, is that in most of us, when I was growing up, we did an experiment where we took magnets and we put it around a piece of copper, and you make a little bulb go on. And it's kind of ironic that we're using the exact same thing. I mean, those big nuclear turbines, those big coal fire, those advanced, those heavy engineers, and it's serious stuff, mainly because of the output of it.
Sure.
But I mean, it is that same basic principle. It's that basic thing of magnet round copper. That's what it is.
Right.
And more advanced versions, but I mean, that's what it is. So anyway, there you get heat as a storage mechanism.
Okay.
And that's nice because they can utilize that. But there are actually cheaper ways to do it. They've come up with the mixture. What they've got is like there's various different salts that they can apply to that. But you could actually do something simple.
Right.
You could do like sand. You could do like concrete.
Right.
Concrete actually has a higher storage the amount of heat that it can take, the amount of heat that it can retain it actually can retain it as long without having to undergo a phase change as the salt.
Right.
I mean, but we've so over-engineered the whole concept of it.
Concrete's not so romantic.
No. Like if you said to someone, hey, no, we're going to make a big hole here, we're going to fill it with concrete, and then we're going to output, and we're going to heat up the concrete so it's really hot, and then that's our storage mechanism. I mean, no, you can't. You're not going to get a BMW like that, because anybody can do it. So that's on the one thing, and obviously I'm oversimplifying to an extent, but then you get super advances in technology, and this is what's just happened recently, is supercapacitors. And supercapacitor is like a beautiful thing inside of every kind of device. There's a thing called a capacitor, and the capacitor stores energy for a short period of time.
In our laptops, in our phones.
Laptops, in most devices, so anything that you've got any retained current. So like when you most people have had this advice before.
Right.
So when they're having a problem with an electronic device, they say unplug it,
yes,
and then leave it off for like 10 seconds.
And everybody wonders why.
Like why? Like why must I do this?
Why can't we just put it on after 1 second? Because we're impatient people.
And it's just allowing the internal circuitry and the capacitors to discharge.
Capacitors, that's
right. And so it comes in various different forms, and mainly used in inverters and that kind of stuff. Anyway, they're a useful thing, and for a long time it's been rumored that the ability, the disadvantage that you always had with capacitors was you could never keep the current that you put in it.
Right.
And of course the volume of storage that was available on any capacitor.
So capacitors discharge the current very quickly. Within
So
10
they
seconds.
take current really quickly,
Yeah.
and they discharge current really
Which
quickly.
is the characteristics of a
That's
capacitor
what it
as
does.
far as we knew so far. And that's what capacitors did, and that's how engineers used them.
Yeah.
But something's changed now, right?
Yes, right. So now they basically went and they did carbon nanotube technology, and they applied it to these supercapacitors. And basically what they've been able to do is they've been able to take a capacitor, and they've been able to increase, first of all, the volume and amount of energy that it could take. Now, a capacitor, various different size capacitor, could always take a lot of energy, but they were never able to keep it for a long time.
Right.
So now you can keep the energy on a supercapacitor from anything between 1 kilowatt hour, 50 megawatt, you're able to keep for up to 14 days.
Right.
And that's seriously
14 days
14
instead of
days.
10 seconds.
Instead of even less than 10 seconds in some cases, but yes. So all of a sudden now you have a device that people would have loved to, for many years, everybody wanted to use a supercapacitor for some storage.
Right.
But the ability to, it just was too fast, it was too transient. You couldn't make it stay, no matter what you did. You couldn't keep the power there long enough.
So a capacitor now is more like what we'd previously call a battery.
Yes, right. So that's what we call them now. We call them supercapacitor batteries.
Right. But batteries the traditional batteries have disadvantages that capacitors don't have.
Of course, yes.
What are they?
So with any battery, you have a thing called an electrolyte. Electrolyte is like the medium, the gel, or the lead acid that they use.
Lithium?
Well, lithium as well, although lithium is slightly in a different class to your typical store types of energy. But the negative components that are associated with this is that there's generally a build-up. So on the plate, so in the terms of when you recharge and discharge, and over time, the battery it ceases to be able to absorb charge as well, and it ceases to be able to give up charge as well.
Can you clean them? Can you improve them?
You can, in some cases, you can, but if you understand that, you can get a maximum lifespan out of, any kind of plate. The build-up is so intense. I mean, it punches little holes in it. It's finished after a period of time.
As we know from our cell phones and our laptop.
Well, in that case, that's a lithium. So in that case, I mean, generally there's swelling on it, and the efficiency, so the overall ability for it to store power and release power, that becomes compromised over time.
Right.
The benefit that people have of lithium, for argument's sake, is that its energy density is is much higher. So
compared to, say, a car battery.
Yeah, much more.
Much more.
But also it has the benefit that you're able to cycle it a lot deeper. So you're able to use more of a lithium battery than you are, for argument's sake.
Cycle it deeper? What is
cycle. So every battery is rated on the number of cycles.
Recharge.
Right, so it's a full discharge normally.
Right.
And you rate a battery, every battery has a thing called a DOD, which is a depth of depletion, versus cycle life characteristics.
Right.
And this is how we assess generally a battery.
Right.
And so you will see it will have, if you've got a 100 amp battery, for argument's sake, and you use 50%, that's called a 50% DOD. Depth of depletion means you're using half of the battery, and if you cycle that on a daily basis, it will tell you how many cycles, how many cycles you can get off that. Maybe you can get 1,000 cycles, maybe you can get 500 cycles.
Right.
But a cycle is, generally you can use it in a year or whatever. You'll use up a little lead acid battery or 2 years.
Well, like a car battery.
Or like car battery. So a car battery, because you're not using the full volume of a car batteries last longer. But under renewable energy applications, you're using that battery generally on a day-to-day basis.
So you fully deplete it?
Well, not fully, never fully, but down to half or 30%.
Okay.
And then you're putting it back up, and half and 30%. You could fully deplete it, but then, so the more you deplete it, the shorter the lifespan of the battery.
Okay.
So people generally try what we call shallow cycle. You impact as low on the battery as possible.
Okay.
To get the maximum possible lifespan of the battery. And this is true of all technologies, whether it's lead acid, whether it's gel, AGM, lithium, it makes no difference.
Right.
That applies to those concepts, because obviously there's a mechanical process that's taking, a chemical process, it's taking place inside of the battery.
Right.
It is decreasing its lifespan based on the way that you use
So the number of cycles, I mean, very, very roughly off the top of your head, for a kind of car battery or a lithium-ion battery would be...
So on a car battery, you'll do anything between a car battery is different, so forget car battery. A car battery is like a cranking battery. It's designed to give up power fast and take charge fast. But in any renewable or energy electrical storage, you use what's called a deep cycle battery.
Right.
So a deep cycle battery is designed that it can be recharged and discharged more.
Right, because with a car battery, it's quick, and then you use it, and you don't really use it after that.
Yeah, and it's got to yield up a lot. It's got to give up a lot of power very fast.
Right. With a laptop battery or a cell phone battery,
right, so
you're using it all the time. You're not
that's
just
right.
using it for
and so it's over a period. So your impact on it is less.
Right. Okay.
So, but at the same time, normally what you'll get is you'll get about 1 to 3 years off your cheap lead acid batteries.
1 to 2, and how many cycles is that?
Well, it's using it every day.
Okay.
So if you take a 100 amp deep cycle battery, you use your 50% 50 amps per day, recharge it 50 amps per day.
Right.
You will get roughly about a year to a year and a half. Max push, you'll get about 2.5 years off.
Right.
That's what happens.
And a laptop battery?
A laptop battery is a lithium cell, so you'll get a lot more out of a laptop battery. A laptop battery, your cell phone battery, you'll get a lot more out of them. If you charge them properly and take care of them properly, those batteries can last you anything up to 12 years. Lithium is like that. Lithium is a good technology like that.
Okay.
And then you get more advanced lead acid technology, which will last you between 2.5 to say 5 years or 4 years. And these are all your kind of, your American class Trojan batteries, good, well designed. They're specifically focused for like renewable energy applications, and they're good batteries.
Okay. So now we come to capacitors.
Right.
How do they compare with?
Right. So I did a really cool calculation. Anyway, so this guy, I had this comment on our Facebook site, and the guy was saying, okay, and so I'm trying to compare, the differences. So I said, well, that's no problem, man. He says, yeah, it's not viable to go solar because you've got to change batteries. So, and the batteries, even the best batteries, only going to last you 12 years.
Okay.
And now, first of all, you got the concept wrong. I'm not trying to supply a battery system for the national grid.
Right.
I'm trying to supply a massive grid feed system, and generally there is no storage. Generally you're just supplying the grid. But I said, but even if there was to be a battery, and we were to do it, and we used a supercapacitor as a battery, our battery would last 1,395 years.
Oh, really? That's quite a long time.
Yeah, sure. I mean, God no.
Well, that takes us back to about Anglo-Saxon times. It was before the Norman conquest.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So and that just puts you in perspective in terms. Now look, the characteristics of usage of a supercapacitor are obviously different to a battery, but it gets you 500,000 cycles.
500,000. So like your cell phone, it's cycling every day, right? Your laptop probably every day.
Right.
So that's 500,000.
Right. So on a lead acid battery,
days.
For argument's sake, you get maybe 1,500 cycles.
Right.
So that's cycled in, or maybe 1,000 cycles. I call it. Okay, your best one. Okay, 1,000 cycles. So that's roughly 3 years.
Right.
That you got on that battery.
Okay. So it just doesn't have the same kind of because it's not chemical.
It's not chemicals, and it's got no internal resistance.
Okay.
Because there is no chemical. It's not trying to. It just takes everything you've got to give it. Its ability to charge is it's every, like in a normal battery system. You first got to heat up. You've got to warm up the battery, and it takes a while. It goes through various states of charge before it actually starts to absorb charge, before it gets to the bulk stage of charge.
Right.
And
this is with what?
This is normal, traditional kind of battery or storage.
Lithium ion.
Lithium ion, very similar. I mean, lithium ion takes power faster, but it's still the same principle.
Right.
It's a different kind of charging algorithm, but it's still a charge. And it takes time to charge.
And there's something changing chemically in these batteries.
Of course, there is.
With a charge or not?
Chemical alteration.
With a capacitor or not?
But with a capacitor, zero. So there's zero internal resistance. So that means that the same amount of time. So if you use 10 kilowatt and you put 10 kilowatt onto it, it will absorb that instantaneously, almost practically. So your charge time is like basically disappeared.
Right.
You know, it's like ludicrous.
And these things are commercially available now.
Commercially available, yes.
And the cost of these compared to traditional batteries?
So they're slightly more expensive, about 35% more expensive.
Which for 500,000 charges is not that
Right, so I said,
charge.
I said to a lot of the engineers, like some people that we spoke to, I said to a lot of them, I said, listen man, you know, it will outlast us.
Yeah.
You'll put in a battery in an application, we won't be around to see the end of that battery. You know, like, and that is just the reality of it. But the real excitement of this, look, it's an emerging, brand new technology. One company so far in the world has cracked this technology, and this technology is now available here in South Africa.
And as you've seen it work?
It functions in Dubai.
You personally?
No, I've obviously not. It's a new technology.
Okay, it's coming now.
Right, but anyway, all over the world there are functioning sites where people fly out to, they see it, fall over and cry about why they never thought of it. And, honestly, I'm telling you. But the functional reality of it is this: is that I don't yet really understand. Like I don't really yet understand how to apply it yet to a renewable system.
Okay.
But if you think about the implications of what it does, forgetting renewable energy just for a moment, and you take a look at a coal-fired power station, a nuclear power station, and you start storing your energy on a massive capacity.
But you mentioned earlier there's not much storage at the moment. People just produce for the grid, and when it's too much, they actually disengage the place.
Correct.
So it's not. So it's just a huge waste.
It's a huge waste.
So there's all that energy. There's all that
But
heat.
also remember, a lot of
not being converted into.
A lot of the load shedding that we experienced last year was due to them shutting down plants for maintenance.
Right.
So the actual grid took impact. They overstretched when they shut down plants because maintenance had to be performed. People got shut down all over the country.
Okay.
Now you place a supercapacitor into that mix, and all of a sudden you can store up to 14 days on your system. You can shut down your plant, go have a beer, play a game of golf, come back, and it's the best part is you can put the power back into that. So when it does come back on, it will instantaneously pick up your output again. It will charge itself in minutes. It's ludicrous.
So in other words, we can take these plants which are producing and then being disengaged and run them 100% of the time, or something like that, and store all the power, and then we won't need to build all these extra power stations.
Right. Or you could just use it to take care of your peaks. So where you are now basically peaking out and then dropping down, you've got an average that is in operation. So if you could have a capacitor that just took care of your peaks, it means that your turbines would only ever have to stay at the average. They wouldn't need to climb up for the peak because your capacitor could take care of all the peaks.
Right.
So all of the hills and anything that might come in between, any sporadic kind of.
So with our existing old style coal-fired fossil fuel thing, we can use them far more efficiently.
Far more efficient.
So we don't need to produce any more. China's producing one a week or something.
Yeah, I heard that. I've actually heard that before, but I'd like to see the write-up on that.
Okay, I've never researched.
The only reason is because it takes between 5 to 10 years to produce.
Yeah.
China has recently, they've just put. First of all, China has more wind power than all of Europe and the United States put together.
Wow.
I mean, it's immense, man. In terms of solar PV, they're talking about knocking out, I think, close on 15% of their grid, completely. 15, but understand this is China. We're not talking about little South Africa. I mean,
it's not a small grid.
2% of their grid is like our entire power consumption, kind of thing. Those aren't real figures, but But anyway, so just to kind of focus on the thing. Now, if you take a look at nuclear power, coal fire, any of those kind of power technologies, they're generally rather inefficient, and the basis for keeping them was operating on the principle that there wasn't another technology that could supply a base load, a persistent power. When you walk to your wall, you turn on a switch, it must work. Big industry, when they're operating, they can't say, oh shit, the sun's gone down, we no longer, we got to switch off.
Right.
So and they traded on this for a long period of time, and this is how they function. But if you take a renewable energy system be it photovoltaic, wind, wave, whatever you want.
Right.
And you apply it to a couple of 50 megawatt capacitors. All of a sudden, you are able to take all the power that they output. If in one part of the country there's no wind, in another part there's sun, you know, and you're able to store all this and deploy it back to grid. You've got parity in terms of being able to make a stable baseload, a stable grid.
Right.
And so the proposition, the opportunity for renewable energy to completely supplant kind of fossil fuel driven kind of energy sources, it's here, it's really here.
Because the storage solves the baseload problem.
The storage solves the baseload problem. But even if supercapacitors never existed,
okay,
even if they weren't around, you with sufficient focus on any concept, bearing in mind that the principle here is to heat something. That's it, man. I mean, it's just to heat something up.
Heating water to make
heat
steam.
something up. So if you completely got rid of the concept of a supercapacitor, and let's say in every province you dug a massive hole, just as an argument, you fill that massive hole with cement, and you know, you had a water source exactly like a coal-fired plant does, and you attach it to turbines, and that just sat there, and all the output that you created from any wind source or any solar source or anything, it just plummeted into this massive heat store.
Right.
So every time the grid couldn't take it, the plants were producing, say in this case 100 megawatt, but the grid's only using 80 megawatt, then that extra 20 megawatt just shoveled into this heat store. And this happens all over.
Can you keep the heat hot by insulation?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, those are thermal characteristics. But I mean, you know, if you think about it, if you're able to do it with a salt, with a improved degree of efficiency, and overly complex, I mean, it goes through some, actually I said it goes through like a phase change. You know, they are playing with the basic kind of atomic structure of their storage medium, just to get a desired result.
And there's simpler ways to do it.
But if you think about it, I mean, take a look at something like a mountain, you know, so there we have a thing here, it's called a bergwind, and the bergwind comes because the mountains are heated, you know, like they get heated up during the day, and the wind from the mountain brings the heat, and at night, you can be sitting outside at night and it's beautiful and warm. All you're talking about is heating something.
Right.
And so by the more concentration that you put on that object, the more heat that you develop in that object, it retains it to a certain degree, and you can improve the efficiency of that retention of heat. You can do this,
right?
And it's not. I mean, it's not. I mean, we came up with some crazy concepts. You know, keep a gap separating it and keep it like hovering on magnetic levitators. But the principle of everything remains the same. It is a basic mechanical truth of anything. If you heat something up, it has a time that it will retain that heat, and if you insulate it, that time will remain longer.
Right.
And if you run water through it and it's hot enough, water boils, and as long as you have enough pressure coming through it, enough heat inside of it, you can drive a steam turbine, and that's exactly what they're doing. And that
in every case,
it's a basic mechanical truth. And so when we come back to the concepts of why we do things so overly complex, they can actually be simple. They can be simple, but they're not.
Okay, the trees here, we collect the seeds in the rivers, mainly along the Berg River, where the Berg River is so polluted. And we start right up at source at Assegai-Bos, collecting seeds of the indigenous breeder crew of yellowwoods and all the other indigenous plants and bushes and grasses and things that filter the water. And we did 16,500 trees last year, over 14,500 this year. We've got another probably 7,000 still to plant this year as well, of all different types. That are indigenous ones. So once Land of Agriculture gets in and moves all the aliens, and we go in afterwards and plant indigenous stuff behind them. Reforest, increase biodiversity, clean the water, get more habitats, so it increases all the species, not just the bar. Well, what's happening, the Berg River now is so polluted that the United Nations have threatened that they will ban all fruit irrigated from the Berg River below Paarl. That's how it gets into the fruit. There we're looking at hundreds of thousands of jobs, billions of rands in exports, so it's a massive, massive problem. Provincial government is working very hard on it, Department of Agriculture is working very hard on it, but there's a time limit where the cut-off has to come. We have to fix the river. No, the farmers are getting into this very much. Of course, there is still sprays, but it's far better controlled. They're doing a lot of aerial spray now, but the helicopters or the planes all work on GPS points now, so there's very little sort of wafting of the spray. It's very specific how they spray it now. It's actually quite professional. And some of the insecticides they're using now are much, much better than they were 5 years ago. Most of the spraying is against fruit fly. Not that we know of, no. Not on that sort of scale. It's come a lot better. When we came here 30 years ago, it was much, much worse. There was no helmets on the tractors. Nowadays the tractors are closed, they've got filters on them, the guys have masks, and of course the chemicals are far more better and not as harmful as they were 30 years ago. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's got much more specific now aerial spraying, in that you don't get that wind waft. They spray, we hear them here, the sunrise, normally when there's no wind around, and they're very, very specific. You watch the sprays only on that orchard. Drifting used to be a major problem before, but it's much better controlled. It is still a little bit, it's not, yeah, but here it's quite specific. But not everybody can afford to have that kind of equipment. Today, arriving this afternoon, is 27 people from Cape Town University that are here to study the water. They're going to open a research station in the old sewage works down the road. Quite a fantastic project that. That's with Professor Kevin Winter. The facility being an old sewage works and right on the tributaries to the Berg is an absolute perfect research station. That particular department at Cape Town University has been working on this river for years now, so they've got a long track record of how the pollution has increased. A lot of it it's not just spray. The effects of spray are getting better and better. I mean, it obviously still is an effect, but the biggest problem now is we've got very good road engineers who make fantastic stormwater drains, and a lot of the sewage works or sewage pipes in the squatter camps are broken, so all the effluent goes straight into the stormwater drains and straight to the river. It just bypasses the sewage works completely. So that's the biggest pollution problem, is coming out of settlements. There's various initiatives going on by Western Cape government, some quite brilliant ones, using biomimicry and that sort of thing. And that's working. It's an experiment now, but it seems to be working. We can go up there and have a look if you want. Well, we don't spray here at all. So we stopped farming here about 10 years ago because of the sprays we had to use. So it's been totally organic now for over 10 years. The only thing we spray here is garlic and chilies. So, well, there's enough here for everybody.
Exactly.
There's enough here for the caterpillars. The chickens eat the caterpillars. So it's, there's plenty for everybody here. Very possible.
It's possible.
It's very possible, yeah. It's proving in a lot of areas. Department of Agriculture are doing quite a initiative with the wheat farmers, where they're not burning and spraying so much. They're leaving all the biomass in the ground, and their crops are increasing at far less expense. So it's definitely possible. There are ways. There is a major problem with bees in South Africa at the moment. We've lost over 40% of that, but that's due to a fungus hitting the larva of the bee in the hive, so the actual larva does not mature. No, not with the 18 hives we've got here, and the fact that we're organic, we get more pollination than we can actually use. Yeah, we're growing things all the year around here, so it's not a problem. Yeah, we actually plant for the bees. We deliberately plant in winter stuff that the bees can eat, so we make sure they've got food all around.
Okay.
We've had quite a long discussions with the road department, trying to get them to stop cutting the road verges, and they've sort of come back with various answers to us. So what we now have to do is, even if they cut it 400 mil off the ground, that'll still give the fakies and all the other things for the bees to eat. But if you add up the millions of hectares of road verges that could become bee fodder, I think that's one of the answers we must look at, is, stop cutting the road verges. There's enough fodder there to keep the bees busy, plenty of them. Yeah, that is a thing, and also we've discussed that a lot with the Department of Agriculture, the way they take the aliens out of the riverbeds. They just flatten everything, I'll show you down here how we do it. We plant the indigenous and we just do this with the aliens. So we use the alien plants as the pioneer plants, plant all the indigenous stuff, and then as the indigenous stuff grows we take out the aliens. Some of the other methods, they go and they flatten everything, they bring in DEET in bulldozers, which weigh tons. I don't know what the effects of that's on the biomass and everything living in the soil, but it must be radical. So we're doing it a different way to a lot of the sort of, but it's a cost factor. You know, to go in and clear things like on the Berg River, it definitely is the most cost effective. So rather than doing something and we get in afterwards and plant the indigenous trees than do absolutely nothing. But the whole idea, the way we do it, is that it gives the bees and all the insects time to adapt from gum to the natural stuff. You know, if you take out the gum completely, a lot of the bees have adapted only to gum, or eucalyptus or various other indigenous trees. So it's a matter of how one does it. No, the whole idea of getting the indigenous plants is to stop the erosion, because a lot of the gums and pines and things, they suck up a huge amount of water, and their root system is not as good for anti-erosion as a lot of the indigenous stuff. They're indigenous, so what we do, we literally find the very few trees that are still here, indigenous trees, and we go at the right time of year, depending on the species, collect the seeds and then replant them back in the same area where we picked them up. Because they have, a lot of these rivers have been devastated, so sometimes it's very difficult for us to find trees in certain areas, but we do find them now and then, and from one tree we can get 3,000-4,000 seedlings off it. So. No, we picked them in the wild.
You picked them
Yeah,
in the wild.
we actually got permission from Cape
And
Nature.
what about
We do, but we only use heirloom seed. No, not really. We order them over internet, or we've got various contacts in Cape Town and around the country where we get them from, friends, people like that. We grow a lot of our own heirloom seeds here now. No, I think let's go around, and I'm certainly not an expert in everything, but I can show you around.
Communicating, and what I love is the fact that you're taking the seeds from the situs, from the same area, and you're putting them back. So it's like bringing them back into the family. And trees talk, don't they?
I'm convinced trees communicate. They definitely do. I mean, there's no question. If giraffes are eating acacia there, all the acacia trees around start putting out a bitterness to stop the giraffe eating them. So you see the giraffe eat here, and then he goes right over there to eat, because these ones have already put out a bitter flavor into their leaves. So there's a communication. How it works, I don't know. But I don't know how cell phones talk to each other. So, you know, there's a lot of communications out there we don't know. But I'm 100% convinced trees communicate.
We're going to see that today if we can.
Yeah, I've tied up today because all the universities come.
You're not in agreement about the swearing, you're just saying that it has improved.
Yeah, no, I've got an agreement with it.
But
No, one of the worst sprays that we used to experience, but I haven't seen it much lately, is a thing called winter oil. And basically what they did, it was sprayed on the trees as they started to bud, and it arrested, literally suffocated everything. So the buds that were starting were suffocated. So the other buds internally could get up to the same sort of level of budding, and it had a certain sort of lifespan, and then when it left they would all bud together. So it saved the farmers a lot of money, because they could then pick once or twice instead of 3 or 4 times as it budded naturally. So it was done for that, but that killed everything. I mean, insects, everything. It was terrible stuff. But as I say, I haven't seen it used for a while. Not in this area anyway.
Thank you.
At least in the last 15 years, all the chemicals, including herbicides, have an adjuvant, which is designed to make the chemicals stick to whatever. They stick to everything. So people everywhere has, instead of before where it would disperse, it now sticks. And so I think that's why everybody's getting more sick these days than before. And I've heard that they use aluminium. So the air is full of aluminium, and already our water supply has alum in it, so there's just an oversupply of aluminium. Growing problem. Yeah. So that's why people have chest problems and dermatitis, and because it's just sticking to everything. And our water supply in Stellenbosch always smells and tastes like whatever is being sprayed at. Could be like in the winter it smells like herbicide, in the summer it smells and tastes like insecticide. So whatever's being sprayed is getting in the water somehow or other.
Natural trees that grow naturally in the rivers and that we propagate from seed and put back in the rivers. In these beds here we got 46,000 seedlings which are going to go into about 32 schools within Biosphere Reserve, and the rest get planted into settlements and various other private homes for food security. All of these trays are filled with vegetables.
Wow, okay.
So
Amazing.
we go in every week. We've got a team going into various communities, distributing seedlings, setting up the gardens, teaching people how to make compost, that sort of thing. All vegetables, yeah. These are just flowers for somebody wanting to plant them, one of the volunteers. And then once they get to a certain size, we then prick them out, put them into, here's a lot of these, you'll see that must be 6 or 8 in one plug. These are 220 plug trays. So all this gets planted out, given away, we don't sell anything. Those have come up in the last 24 hours. You must know these.
No?
And keyhole gardens with a compost heap in the middle.
Oh, I love it. Explain it.
Well, basically what it is, it's a raised bed, so we put sticks and cardboard and anything underneath. Here's a compost heap in the middle, so you don't have to fertilize it, it just leaches out from the compost. And we've put a lot of these into, old age homes, informal settlements, things like that. They work for two reasons. People that can't bend down, it's easy for them to garden. It's self-generating. And in a lot of the areas they've got pigs, so they can't have gardens. This is fantastic. You put them in, and it's all made from alien timber that's taken out where the aliens have been cleared out of the rivers. And you can easily feed a family off this. I mean, this has now just been revamped, but we had them where we put the overhead gardens. You pick pumpkins here, and hold back there was tomatoes and climbing plants and beans. But when we finish the centre at Stellenbosch, there'll be a whole example of all of this. So we bus the communities in and take them there for a whole day, and they learn, and everything's done with recycled materials, so it costs nothing.
So these are some of the alien...
Yeah, just alien things.
Taken
Often,
out
municipalities always chopping down things, so everything we use is, we make it in such a way that anybody can do it, no matter what their financial incomes are.
Cost of
All of the stuff here we
vegetables
give
and
away.
seedlings is really expensive. So if they couldn't, how would they get a supply of that?
Just bonus. All of this stuff here, we've got people, volunteers just planting all the time. So we've normally got between 30 and 40,000 seedlings in stock all the time.
Wow.
So it's done through volunteers and things like that, and we propagate a lot of our own seeds, so it doesn't cost us much. Everything's reused, yeah.
And where do the volunteers come from? The local community?
Local communities. Beauty of having Jan Marais is right in the middle of the university, so we've got about 150 students signed up as volunteers, and then we get volunteers from Luxembourg. They come here for 6 months at a time, and normally we've got at least 2 or 3 of them, and then we get interns and woofers, and so it's all done on a shoestring.
Sculptures?
Yeah, that's just a friend of mine. They do the molds, and then of course they make the bronze ones. So I just take his original one. Yeah, the only pesticide we use here, we grow the chilies and we grow the garlic. There's the chilies you can see there. Here's the wild garlic, things like that. We put that in a liquidizer. We then filter it and put it into a back spray, and we spray that. That's the only thing we spray here. We do. I mean, you'll see some of them eating it. Chickens are the worst. They come and eat the bugs and eat everything else as well. We just plant enough for everybody. So we've always got a supply. All our staff virtually feed off this garden as well. And the bugs also eat it. So we're really not worried if there's two. But it'll just reduce it. Oh yeah, we see it especially in the ECD schools, which we supply from this garden as well. Those kids are definitely, you could see a change after 5 or 6 months. They were definitely healthier, there's no question of that. Because they were literally living on rice on Monday, pasta on Tuesday, samp. They got no minerals or vitamins in their diet or meat at all. So if we deliver, in summer when it's really flourishing here, we deliver between 80 and 120 kilos a week. So that's definitely adds to their diet. Oh, I've never really measured it out, but it's quite, I'll show you up, it goes right up past the red bus there. Yeah, probably a bit more.
Okay.
Probably a bit more, because we literally, between the pear trees, that's where we plant. So every piece of ground's used. We haven't taken the pear trees out to make a vegetable garden. They're planted 4 meters apart, so we've got 3 meter vegetable gardens right up through the pear orchard. Everything grows together.
Yes, and that's just what it should be. Just utilizing the land, utilizing what is around, and what I love is his principle of sharing and giving of his knowledge and giving of the seeds and passing them on. I think that's just extraordinary, and he's a man of the times, you know?
Yeah, the other thing we're researching now is a centrifugal toilet which was developed in Sweden. It's been around for quite a few years, and they use them on all the road stops going through Sweden, and they've about 4 or 5 times more people using them than they expected, and they're still working fine. At the Eden project, they've got one that handles 72,000 people a year, and it's very simple. It looks like an hourglass, and you use a normal flushing toilet, because a lot of people in this country don't want dry toilets, they want what everybody else has got. And so basically the flush toilet, all the effluent goes into this thing, and just through its shape and the spin, it separates the solids from the liquids. So the liquids will go into our tree nurseries, and the solids go into a thing below with worms, and it turns into fertilizer. So no sewage leaves that property at all. So one of the projects we're working on now is to go into informal settlements and split them into areas, because at the moment to put these sort of things in, these need no maintenance at all, they've got no moving parts. But we're trying to split the areas into, say, 100 houses, put them through one of these systems, put a nursery and a recycling unit in between those 100 houses, and that will then go to produce. We'll put a nursery there too, and then we will then buy the trees back from the community and replant them in the rivers. So it's win-win both ways. The banana circle, what a banana circle is, it really is just a round pit. You dig a pit. We've got this one lined because we're experimenting with not just with grey water but with human waste as well. So we dug this pit about 2 meters wide, 1.5 meters deep, and we lined it so it is waterproof, so nothing can get into the soil because we're quite close to the river. We then piped that into a Jojo tank, but there's about 8 people using this toilet every day, and nothing ever has gone into the Jojo tank. So what we did, we put about 1 kilo of worms in it first, and then we covered it with soil, and when we planted things like Phragmites, reeds, bananas and things like that, so that sucks up all the liquids, and the worms eat all the solids. And we've had that down now for about 1.5 years, and it's working perfectly. Now that's why it's lined. And the University of Cape Town is keeping a beady eye, and they're quite interested to see how it works. So it's very nice to have a university watching it, and if it does, if we can prove the concept and scientifically prove it, then we'll see how we can roll it out in other areas. Not just one, because through the biosphere reserves, we're in 121 countries, about 760 biospheres worldwide, and we've now got 8 in South Africa. So we've got very, very strong connections with tertiary institutions and a whole lot of other specialized institutions worldwide. So when we do experiments, we've really got the backing, and anything new we try, obviously we need to test for 2, 3, 4 years, depending on what the projects are. And we obviously need a university or some specialized institution to verify what we're doing technically, to get the technical papers out there. So it's not just a bunch of huggers trying to do something, it's technically proven. So, and then we can convince, say, municipalities that this is not a dangerous thing and there's no leakage into the rivers, that type of thing. But without having that relationship with universities, it's just talk. We've had a lot of discussions, and we work very closely with municipalities, and they definitely do care. It's just that the processes take so long. I mean, you take our sewage works in Franschhoek. The one that was designed now was probably designed 12 years ago. It takes a whole lot of time to get the funding, and then to get the tenders out to build it, and in that 10 or 12 years to get that process through, certain communities
still not got
have
it?
bludgeoned. No, we've got a new one here, but if you take that time, it's already undercapacitated. You know, so it's not that they don't care. In fact, there are some very good people working in the municipalities that are very caring, but it's the red tape and the whole process that they've got to go through to get things implemented in time. And you get a town like Franschhoek, it's designed for Franschhoek residents, for the size of the town, with probably a 20-year expansion plan behind it. And then we get festivals like Bastille Festival, bring in another 60,000 people, and it just can't cope, so it goes straight over the top into the rivers. So it's all this sort of planning that happens, and bludgeoning communities which were never planned for. Houses or properties that are supposed to have 4 people on have now got 20 on. So sewage is the biggest problem, there's no question of it. No, it works well.
And there's some influence coming into the reed bed here. Is that what?
No,
including
not
that,
from
or
our
is that
houses,
to-
so those go through different systems, no, but not into this dam. Yeah, come here at night, you can hardly talk. That these farmers are making a living, it's their living, it's their business. And if a spray is legal, it should have been tested by the authorities. You know, RIs were tested by universities, and I think where the fault lies, if it's damaging, it should be made illegal. So there's something wrong with the legislation, not necessarily the farmers themselves. So that's where the trouble should lie. But you've got very powerful companies like Monsanto and these things. I mean, they're always in court for something. So, yeah, this thatch is just coming. Came with that house and thatch. That's from old straw, and it's mixed with cow manure. They run around all day. No, they choose where they want to lay. On our bed, even in the chair in the office, there's one every day. And in the top of the bus, the other one's laying. So they lay where they want. There's a chair in the office where the dog's allowed to sit. And when the chicken wants to lay on the chair, it chases the dog off, lays the egg, and then the dog can come back.
And does the dog lie on the egg then?
No, if it gets there, he'll eat it before we get to it, so we got to watch it.
Yesterday I released a document that was in relation to, there was a news article came out that the minister was basically trying to play down the costs of solar power. They said that the solar power plants were costing them between 50 and 62 billion over the course of his 20-year contract. And as a result it was too expensive, and therefore South Africa was using it to justify the need to move over to nuclear. And there's a whole lot of back-end politics that goes in with that. Anybody that's in the renewable energy industry knows that it's an absolute load of rubbish, because a solar plant, and in this case they're referring to a 100 megawatt solar plant, for us to build a 100 megawatt solar plant costs us roughly 2 billion rand, and therefore it makes no sense as to why you would enter into a contract for 60 billion when the actual cost of the plant is 2 billion, and it makes its power from the sun exactly the same way that these people are going to be doing it. So why wouldn't local municipalities, Eskom, etc., whoever, why wouldn't they just build their own plant and pay some people for maintenance, and that's it? And then it wouldn't cost them 60 billion rand, because ultimately renewable, what I proved inside that letter, is a far cheaper form of power. And then in addition to it, I brought into the environmental benefits in terms of the amount of charcoal that is used by coal fire, the amount of water that is used by coal fire, 1.32 litres of water per kilowatt hour of energy, 1.32 litres, ludicrous. 1 kilogram of coal burned for 1 kilowatt of energy, 1 kilowatt hour of energy. I mean, it's absolute madness. So then I went on to nuclear, and I just explained the whole process of uranium and the cost, the CO2 costs that are associated with it. And I summarized basically by offering to show them supporting documentation that proves how much a solar plant costs on a cost sale basis on that scale, which is 100 megawatts. And at the end of the day, we are being completely misled. This has become a political tossing ground. What they're really trying to do is they have an intention, a small group of people have an intention to try and go with a beneficial kind of contract system where other people are making astronomical amounts of money that is costing us, the taxpayer, and also the consumer of that power. We are having to pay for this, and for no reason. for no reason, and they're misleading us as to why they are doing that, and that's what that document was about.
My name is Nobile Ngosi from the Northwest University Climatology Research Group and South African Climate Change Coalition.
What does that do, that climate change group?
Our climate research group, we go around in the community and then we find problems that are related to climate change, like air quality. I'm specifically concerned about air quality, and then we take measurement, and when we measure how much emissions is emitted from domestic burning, so that we can know like how much content, and then we can try to present that in the form of a document, and then we report it to the government, so like we can tell them something is wrong. This amount of people are dying every year because of air pollution, so we need to do something about it.
Do you have any success with them doing anything about it?
Yes, there's been interventions in the low-income settlement in Kwadela, it's a township in Mpumalanga, whereby there's like thermal insulations and then changing of the stoves, and then teaching people about how to burn efficiently so that to reduce the emissions.
How to bake efficiently?
How to burn.
Burn efficiently?
Yes.
Do you feel that burning is still necessary?
People in low-income residential areas actually don't have much money to buy electricity. Even if they do have money, it runs out before the month ends, so they feel like coal is cheaper, and then so they burn coal instead of burning electricity.
But electricity at the moment is from coal anyway, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
But then the emissions now are occurring at a local level, but it affects them.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the problem.
Do you think it's important that the coal should affect anybody at all?
No. Actually, I think we should move from fossil or solid fuel burning and move to renewable or natural sources of energy like the sun. We need to move to hydropower and wind. So,
if you had some advice to give the government from the things that you've been seeing, what would you, if you were the number one person in the government and you could choose what you asked people to do, or what you got the country to do, what would you like to see if you had indefinite money?
Okay, I have two things. The first thing, I would actually like them to integrate education, like the curriculum education, with the environmental studies, so that they can actually, when the kids grow, they actually have a background of environmental issues and stuff, and then to inspire them and to spark that climate activist in them, so that they actually know when they do something there's an effect. Okay, secondly, I would actually like the government to actually do something about the emissions from low-income residential areas, because it's really bad. And yeah.
So typically, how much would you say of the people in townships are utilizing electricity?
Okay, there is access to electricity, but then with load shedding, and then the price of electricity going up every year, people actually can't afford it. According to Dr. Mluli, 80% of the population in low-income residential areas still use solid fuels, even with access to electricity, because they can't afford it. So the access doesn't change much. It changes, but it doesn't change much. So we actually need to remove the need to burn solid fuels.
That's a very good statement that you made there.
Yeah.
Can you just outline one more time, if you're, in order to stop the problem that your group are encountering now?
Yes.
It is a very serious problem. What sort of side effects, first of all, would you?
Oh my God, there's environmental side effects, and then there's health. That's like the center of the problem. Like children, especially children and elders, they're actually vulnerable to air pollution related disease, because they are the women are the ones that cook, so they're always in the kitchen, so they're exposed to these emissions. The children are always in the kitchen ready to get dinner, so they're always exposed. And then their physiology, they actually breathe in much faster than adults, so they're actually very much vulnerable to air pollution related diseases. According to, is it David? Yes, like 2,000 children die every year in South Africa due to air pollution related diseases, so it's bad. And then the environmental issues, we have ambient air quality is poor, and then you're gonna have fog, and then
present geological era, from the time of the Industrial Revolution until today, during which humanity has begun to have a significant impact on the environment. This is a geological age of mankind's making. And how's that working out for us? Well, the more carbon pollution we put into the atmosphere, the more we change our climate and risk our extreme weather events. From the 1880s, when we